Welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over optimizations when it comes to the list elements. All right. So you can use the list elements in the Inhouz Cloud App Builder to display data from large data sets. In our case here, we have a simple example of a table that we've connected to a random data API, the random data API service. This is currently scroll paginated. So when we scroll, new data is going to be coming into our list. If you want to see how this was done, you can watch one of our previous videos on scroll pagination with lists. So what we're going to talk about now is optimization. All right. As you can imagine, in an application, if you had a lot of records, and sometimes, depending on how your application is designed, this could lead to, performance issues, right? Because when you think about the way the Inhouz App Builder is designed behind the scenes, each element here is a reactive element, right? So this means that each element is going to react to data changes, right? So if some data changes in your application, right, then each element is going to respond to that data change. So let me just go ahead and demonstrate what I'm talking about. I'm just going to go ahead and drag an input into our application. I just dragged it and I did not drop it properly. Let me just reposition this. As you can already see, I'm already dealing with some performance issues because of how massive our data set is. All right. I'm just going to drag and drop that at the top. Going to change that to a size of, let's say, 20%. We're going to go ahead and make this a number. All right, so change this to type number. All right. So here I'm going to go into my text block, into the text block 9, which is holding the name of our user. I'm going to go to the styling, and I'm just going to change the styling here. I'm going to change the color. I'm going to use some logic. I have a function called mirror function. I'm just going to use that function for this. So basically, whenever I pass in data, it's going to basically return that data. So let me close this out really quickly. Go back to my input elements. Let's call this number color tracker. Just a random name off the top of my head. I'm going to go into my app data, my initial data. I'm just going to paste this in. I'm going to give this a default value of 0. And I'm going to do the same thing. Let me get rid of that. Oops. All right. I think we should already have that there. Nope, we do not. So let me just go ahead and paste that in. Our live app data. It's at the top over here. All right, perfect. So we've mapped this to our app data. And then what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to go back over here to text block 9 into my styling. And I'm going to say that if, I'm just going to change this to code. I'm going to say that if parameter app underscore data dot number color tracker is greater than, call it 2, then we should display red, else we're displaying blue. All right, so the color should be blue. All right, as you can see, the color is blue. When I go above 2 to 3, the color changes to red. Right, it took a second there, but let me go back to 2. As you can see, it changes back to blue. For it to go back to 3, it changes back to red. All right. So I just did that example just to show you that the elements in the application are reactive. They are always listening to app data changes, right? So this could cause a problem when you have, massive list elements and you have an application that is having tons of data changes. Maybe you're fetching data here, users are entering data and all that. But you have maybe like a list block that maybe in your example, there isn't anything that's happening with your list that is relevant to maybe the data changes that are going on in your application. So for this, we have something that is going to minimize the hit. We're basically just going to make all these elements non-reactive because these elements are only pointing towards the list item data, right? And because they are pointing towards the list item data, they only render whenever the list item data is available. So they only ever need to render one time. They never need to re-render, right? So we have our list item. This list item row is only going to render if there is a list item data. So these elements that are not listening for data changes, right? We can go ahead and make these items non-reactive, meaning that regardless of however, many times data in our application changes, these elements are not going to recalculate themselves. They're not going to re-render themselves. So I'm just going to click on our image. I'm going to scroll down. I'm currently in the attributes to where it says non-reactive, and I'm going to just set that to true. I'm going to go to the text block 11 that houses our email. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to say this should be non-reactive. I'm going to go over here to text block 10, which houses our username. I'm also going to say I do not want this to be reactive. I'm going to go over here to text block 12, which houses our list item index. And I'm also going to do the same thing. I'm just going to say I don't want this to be reactive. And if we go back over here and first of all, let's just save this real quick and refresh the page. Okay. So now when I toggle up to 3, we have our change. It was a lot faster. You can see it's just much more efficient. If you have your task manager, you could always take a look at how your apps are performing. When you have massive data sets, you can monitor the memory, you can monitor the application speed. But basically, what's happening here with this non-reactive flag is that we're basically saying that for this list elements, right, the only elements that we want to still have the natural reactive states of Inhouz Cloud app elements is the text block 9 that houses the user's name. And the only reason why we want this to still stay reactive is because it interacts with data that is outside of our list item data, right? If this styling was based on a parameter within our list item data, then we could also make it non-reactive because the list item data is going to be there at the time of the render. All right. So let's go ahead and just demo out this element being non-reactive. All right. So here, if I go back to 2 or 1, it's still red. If I scroll up to 3, 4, right? And our rule was that whenever it goes above 2, it's red. Whenever it's below 2, it's blue. But because we've made this non-reactive, it's no longer listening for changes in our app data. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it and remove this and make it reactive again. And as you can see, the second we did that, it reacted to our current state of the input and went to its proper state. So if I take this back over 2, it's red. If I bring it back to 2, it's blue. All right. So we've basically just gone over how to optimize large data sets by basically making elements non-reactive, meaning that they don't exist, right? They no longer have an effect on the page. They're pretty much at that point static elements, right? So they would no longer re-render, they would no longer refresh, they would no longer factor into any page recalculations, and that's just perfect. So we can scroll happily knowing that all we have is just a bunch of static text, static elements, right? right? That have no effect on the performance of our application, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and take this back up to 3. Boom. Take it back to 2. Easy peasy. All right. That's it for list optimizations using the it's non-reactive flag to basically make elements static. All right. That's it for this video. See you in the next one.